To our fellow cleaning professionals, we know our industry does not get a lot of respect. We're so glad you're here. We make this free content for you. We understand the challenges of the industry. If you've gotten value out of this, please subscribe. And for those business owners you know, team members you know, share this podcast with them. We're so grateful, and let's get back to the doc.
Joel, we're back, and I will admit, this series I have a love-hate relationship with this series. Understanding that these are ancient stories, new stories, stories from your own customers, people who you work with that are just dealing with stupidness.
And not that employees are stupid.
No.
On occasion, they do dumb things.
Yeah, so when employees do dumb things, what do you have today?
This story goes back at least 25 years. Client, the prime on a contract, hired a subcontractor. The subcontractor provided custodial services. Great company, did a great job, great reputation, hardworking,
So there are no red flags on the outset.
No red flags at all. But sometimes, long hours, fatigue, stress in people's lives, they don't always stay focused like they should. Summer weekend, finish cleaning a building. They close it up, they leave Friday night, so they probably got done somewhere between 9, 10 o'clock at night. Monday morning, the facilities manager was the first in the building about 8 a.m. and walks into water all on the first floor. Looks up, water coming through the ceiling. Goes up to the second floor, water coming through the ceiling.
How many floors are there?
Goes up to the third floor, water coming through the ceiling. Lord. Goes up to the fourth floor. Water. The individual somehow left a slop sink running.
No, by running, they left the water on.
They left the water on.
Okay. No, but it's a slop sink.
It's a slop sink. Hey, it's a drain. It should go down the drain. Well, they didn't make sure that the mop stayed in the mop handle. And the mop slid down and blocked off the drain. And it wasn't like it was a trickle. It was like
it was raining inside.
Well, the water was flowing probably at the 4 gallon per minute.
Are you serious?
It was full open. So
this was not an easy bit.
Yeah, it was not a pretty situation at all. And I remember getting the phone call on my cell phone while I was still in bed sleeping because I worked later in the day. I wasn't up at 7 o'clock in the morning back in those days. Particular facility also had all hardwood floors throughout it. So, wood and water they don't go together.
No, they don't.
And to make matters worse, because it was so long ago and the water did go from the first floor through the floor, through the ceiling into the basement. So literally there was 5 floors worth of water between the basement all the way up to the 4th floor. So I can't remember how many tens of thousands of gallons of water they told us had flowed out of that as of, Friday evening to Monday morning. But in the basement, they had a lot of paper storage of client files.
Sure, 20 plus years ago? Sure.
Yeah. So things weren't like electronically held back then. There was microfiche and things like that, but a lot of what they did wasn't that type of an industry that would store it on that type of...
So you have paper archives.
Paper archives. We had to bring in a disaster restoration company, and each page had to be dried out, and all the water and the repair of all the hardwoods and all of the plaster ceilings, because it was plaster and lath, because this building was over 100 years old. It had a lot of character, and it was just an utter nightmare. Needless to say, because of the entire situation. I mean, I know that particular subcontractor ended up losing their insurance, made them uninsurable. Obviously, the insurance company had to pay out for this loss, plus the company I worked for, whatever wasn't covered by their insurance had to be picked up by the company I worked for insurance, as well as a client that was a very high-level client that we had all those years ago. Ended up being a very strained relationship with that individual. It was never able to be mended after that. It was just very adversarial. We got a disaster restoration company out there within under an hour, pumping water, drying out things.
Well, and obviously, I mean, this is one of those situations where heads will roll. That's going to happen. I understand as we do the rearview mirror on it. Employee training. Employee training
is huge, even when it's a subcontractor. Yeah. Because that subcontractor has to mirror all of your policies and all of your procedures. And in a previous episode, we talked about the security of a facility. Mm-hmm. And this kind of falls under that.
Oh, sure.
Make sure that your mop handles are adhered into the right places so that they're not going to fall into a slop sink. You want them to drain into the slop sink because they're typically wet. You don't want it on the floor. So they were trying to do the right thing. But what I can't understand all these years later is why they didn't have the faucet turned off. That is the biggest question that I still have today. Looking back, just doesn't make sense. And all I can associate it with at this time is it just had to be a lack of judgment at the time because of some stressor that may have been going on at the time that I may not have been aware of.
Yeah.
So important to get people to double check their work, even their own personal closets where they're putting the equipment at the end of the night, to ensure that things are put away properly, that lights are turned out, coffee pots are off, all those types of things, because we are the last line of defense when we are in a building.
Right.
And this is one of those things that could have probably have been avoidable by paying a little bit more attention. And obviously something was going on in their life because that was not them. They were some of the most responsible individuals.
This subcontractor had successfully cleaned this facility many times before.
5 years previous.
5 years, okay.
They had been a subcontractor for the company that I worked for back then for many, many years.
Okay. The cleaning business will always have its challenges. We don't have to create them, and there certainly are ways to avoid them.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.